This podcast discusses themes of mental health, which some people may find emotive, such as suicide or other adult-themed content. The information contained in this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. All views expressed are solely those of individuals involved and do not represent the opinions of any entity whatsoever with which we have been, are now, or will be affiliated. The information is not meant to diagnose or treat any mental health condition. If you're experiencing mental health symptoms, we encourage you to contact a mental health service within your community. If you're experiencing a mental health emergency, please seek the relevant support and interventions by presenting to your local accident and emergency department or contacting the relevant emergency services.
You're listening to the Men's Mental Health Podcast, The Man Hug.
Welcome to The Man Hug, the monthly men's mental health podcast. I'm Dean McShane.
I'm Dan Cooper.
I'm Ian Hayes.
And I'm Conleth Kelly.
Each month we will discuss a different topic related to men's mental health, which will include a guest speaker who will discuss their own personal story. And each month we will also be showcasing an organisation or charity within the Merseyside area who work within mental health to help build your signposting skills. Hello, welcome to this month's Man Hug. This month we are focusing on the theme of food, and for that we'll be joined by two more fantastic guests. A little later on, Chris Guy from the Mersey Mind Project will be joining us to share all about the work they do and how you can get involved. And in a moment we'll be talking with MP Ian Byrne. Today it's just me, Conleth and Dan, as our lovely Ian has recently retired, so he's spending a week with his family, and he'll be back next month when we're going to be looking at the theme of gym culture. So our first guest is Ian Byrne. Ian is a Member of Parliament and campaigner who has served as the MP for Liverpool West Derby since 2019. Born in Liverpool, Ian has a background in trade union, organising and community activism. He co-founded the Fans Supporting Foodbanks initiative and is best known nationally for leading the Right to Food campaign, which seeks to make access to food a legal right in the UK. Ian's been recognised for his work on food insecurity and workers' rights and was named the overall MP of the Year by the Patchwork Foundation in 2021. Ian, welcome to the Man Hug.
No, thanks very much for having me. Yeah. It's quite an honour.
No, thanks very much for joining us. And we couldn't think of a more perfect guest for the theme that we've got, really, because it's something that's really close to your heart, isn't it? So the Right to Food campaign, let's talk about that first. How would you explain it to someone who's got no idea of what it is?
So in 2019, and we probably touch on my background, but in 2019 I'm elected into Parliament and I stood on the Right to Food manifesto. No, Jeremy Corbyn put it in the manifesto in 2017 and 2019. Obviously after the defeat we thought, well, we need to keep that, and obviously I then get elected into Parliament and it was always going to be something which I was going to be passionate about. So what we then tried to do was obviously evolve it, and suddenly I'm in politics. You know, I've got an MP's hat on instead of being like a community activist. I'm also now a Member of Parliament, and how best can we utilise what we had at our fingertips, which we didn't know really. You know, obviously it was a new MP. You know, you don't really know how it works and what you can do and the power it can give you and the opportunities it can give you, more importantly. So that was a bit of a learning process, and what I did then was go on to something called the Environmental, Food and Rural Affairs Committee. Now, it doesn't sound as though a lad from an MP from West Derby should go on it, but obviously have food within it. And that was probably one of the best moves he ever did, really, because I served 4 years until the last election, and cross-party. So you're working with Conservatives, Lib Dems, SNP. But what we did do, and what I could do, was obviously bring my experience from Liverpool onto that committee and utilise that committee to highlight what we were seeing around food poverty and Right to Food. And the Right to Food campaign, Dean, nearly, I'd say, kick-started politically from that committee, because we had a chap called Henry Dimbleby, the famous chef, who'd been given a brief to create a national food strategy by Michael Gove at the time. And Henry came before the select committee. And me and Henry had a little bit of a ding-dong with regards to national food strategy, because I said it isn't worth the paper it was wrote on if it didn't tackle 10 million people not being able to put a meal on the table. Henry didn't believe that the right to food was needed. He thought the mechanisms were in place within the structures of government to tackle what I was saying. Now, you know, hunger is a political choice, and we'll touch on that probably right through the podcast. But I disagreed, and basically Andy said to me, okay, Ian, we'll agree to disagree. You go away, and you prove to me and the National Food Strategy that a right to food needed. So that sort of gave us an opportunity, and using the Fans Supporting Foodbanks national network and what we built up, and it was during COVID. So we went out, Zooms aplenty, trying to figure out basically not what I thought a right to food was, but what would a right to food look like to somebody on the school gate during COVID. So all that was brought in, and then I was so lucky, and again you go back to in Parliament, having the opportunity to work with Shami Chakrabarti, who was brilliant on helping us to create a framework for the right to food. Bet Winter, another MP who's such a loss to the Labour Party and Wales, and a dear friend, and all other people connected to what we were trying to do. We had Fans Supporting Foodbanks, Dave, everybody was in this melting pot. And what it boiled down to then was 5 asks, basically, you know, universal free school meals, ensuring that any benefits, pension, universal credit, made sure that you could actually live in without stigma and feed yourself, basically, because we knew the welfare system was failing people massively. Community kitchens, the ability to make sure that went into legislation, so we'd have an oversight body, and also planning. Now, you'll know as, you know, your job, you know, we see a proliferation of bad food outlets within the poorer communities which feed obesity and don't do nothing to tackle hunger. So the whole gamut really, and what we always said was that was the starting point. That's where we felt as though that could be a right to food for a submission into the National Food Strategy. And then we turned that into a political campaign, because Dimbleby had said to me, well, if people say they want it, well then I'll listen. So then we run, I was still a councillor as well as an MP. I put it to Liverpool City Council, a right to food city. Liverpool become the first right to food city. And then we run that right throughout the country. I think we got about 25, 28 cities signed up. So we made quite a political movement with it. Dimbleby didn't put it in the National Food Strategy. And he probably won't sue me for saying it was going to be in the National Food Strategy, and the government made them pull it before they put it out there. So that has kept the ball rolling really, and politically it's gone really from strength to strength. Yeah.
So I know you mentioned Liverpool became the first city to the right to food. What does that look like then for the city?
Well, that's a great point. We actually had a congress in the University of Westminster 2 weeks ago, last Saturday, and that was a real good point. You know, it's okay signing up to a right to food city. Well, what does it mean? Yeah. You know, what does that mean from a council perspective? What does that mean? And unfortunately, lots of councils have just ticked the box and not actually done it. And we know within austerity and constrained budgets, but a right to food city should mean something, and it should mean something quite substantial. I've had some good successes working with other councils. Islington were good, a couple in Cumbria who've looking at hardwiring right to food into decision making. We've also got Paul Doherty, who started Fans Supporting Foodbanks in Northern Ireland. He's now Deputy Mayor of Belfast. Paul's looking at all different ways now politically how we can make sure, because Belfast declared itself a right to food city last year, along with Derry. So it's spread, as I said, right to the UK. But what we now need, obviously, is next steps. And I can touch on quite an exciting development which is coming down the line.
Yeah, amazing. For anyone who's kind of listening, why is it needed? Why do we need this sort of right to food campaign? I think for us who sort of maybe live and breathe within certain health areas, we can see it on the ground level. But what's sort of your answer to that, especially in Parliament? Why is it needed?
Well, look, we've got more food banks than McDonald's.
Yeah.
And that's a simple fact. Hard to digest. We're the 6th richest country in the world. With Fans Supporting Foodbanks, we run pantries throughout the city. They're overwhelmed. You speak to anyone on the ground tackling food poverty, it's not getting any better. It's actually getting worse. We've got millions and millions and millions of kids going hungry. Yesterday statistics from the government came out, have just put a tweet out about it, and it's over 34% of kids in West Derby are in poverty. You know, this is huge. You know, for me, it's the defining issue of the Labour Party. If it doesn't solve that, it's failed. You know, so obviously I bring up my experience and something which I believed in, and now we've got the levers of power winning government. It's something which we should be throwing the kitchen sink at, and it's something which obviously I'm usually passionate about. But the right to food, we feel as though it's something now, not just in the UK, you know, we're speaking to people in Brazil, people across the world who want to implement this. There's a huge movement growing in Europe around what a right to food could look like. So it's gaining real traction because it's not just the UK that's suffering these inequalities. This is 40 years of neoliberalism has absolutely ripped across the world, hasn't it? And we're seeing that in every country. So there's a real appetite, you know, for this type of legislation. But what we want to do next step is give the Prime Minister, whoever that may be, a roadmap. That's what we feel as though has been missing.
Yeah, definitely. But when you look at the Right to Food campaign and you look at all of the sort of like the subheadings of it, the one that jumped out to me was the community and dignity aspects of it.
Yeah.
So the Right to Food is about more than just being fed. It's about dignity, choice, the ability for communities to provide for themselves. So how would you like to sort of like, you know, see that be part of the campaign role?
Oh, massively so. It's an absolutely integral part, you know, of everything that we try to do is destigmatise people who need that help. But, you know, you look at, there's a fantastic, he's not in it, I don't think he's in here, Bryce Evans. So Bryce has done things around what happened after the war with community kitchens, community restaurants, you know, so, you know, it wasn't food banks, you'd actually been able to go into a subsidised restaurant to get a meal, you know, and that's something which we've looked at intently as a key part of the Right to Food, and we actually trialled it. So Robbie Fowler got in touch with me, for any listeners don't know, one of the greatest Liverpool players that ever lived.
Also known as God.
And he said, I want to make a donation, Ian. So I said, well, look, what we'd love to do is actually utilise your donation to trial a community kitchen. So I had a fantastic school in West Derby who said they'd open the doors and give us the opportunity to basically, the idea was simple, was to turn the school kitchen into a community kitchen, because you wouldn't have to, you know, lots of areas haven't got infrastructure now, they've lost community centres, lost resource. So normally, well, a lot of the times, a school's potentially the only valuable resource asset within the community. So to give us the opportunity to go out and utilise their kitchen, working with a fantastic non-for-profit organisation that delivers schools within school food within Liverpool, school dinners called Food for Thought, who we'd worked with for a long time. So we come together, and what we did, we took over the school for the week, and in the evening we turned it into a restaurant. So we invited kids, parents, siblings, family, extended family into this restaurant. You know, we called it Scout's Kitchen, and we wanted to show councils, governments, what you could actually achieve. You know, what can be done. So we done that for the weekend. It was massive success. We absolutely loved every minute of it. It worked fantastically well, and it was what could be done. And then from that, I done like a podcast on it with the BBC. Someone listened to it, and then a fantastic woman in Manchester then set up Man Kitchen. And that was the idea. You know, basically, if you could have Geordie kitchen, Cockney kitchen, out, you know, so that's a key element of what could be achieved with the Right to Food, and that's something which we're massively in favour of.
Amazing. And it's good to hear that, because you're demonstrating to everyone else what can easily be done, isn't it?
What can be done,
you know? Obviously, it's a mental health podcast, so one thing that we were looking at was people who live in food insecure households are more than twice as likely to have a mental health condition, which is a horrible statistic, isn't it? You know, is this something you found through your own work and your research, the impacts food can also have on mental health?
Oh, massively. But poverty's got a huge impact, isn't it, on mental health? And, you know, we see that, and, you know, that's part of the cycle, isn't it? You know, which people are caught up in. You know, being in poverty creates huge mental pressures. You know, so, you know, anything we can do to alleviate people's from a mental health perspective, no, it's got to be a good thing. And we talk about, you know, we have many battles in with the government at the moment, certainly around like PIP reform and you know, and disability benefits, the cuts what they tried to bring. You can't start removing that when we're still living in a society where millions and millions of people going hungry, millions of people haven't got a house which is suitable for them. You know, a key part of a key issue within my community, within my constituency, within the city, indeed the country, is housing. Yeah. You know, so it's all interconnected. Everything's interconnected. You know, we do lots of work with Older A around this, and you'll know being professionals and what you do. So if we can alleviate and lift people out of poverty, that will do nothing but good for their mental health.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And we had Vince Stokes, who's a young member of Parliament. He's joined us for an interview. And he set up the Feed the Need campaign in St Helens. And what he was looking at was food insecurity with children, especially within school age. And he was telling us that, you know, food insecure children are 3 times more likely to feel stressed or worried every day compared to food secure children. The impact that must have on young people in terms of just the basic things of getting through their day at school, you know, the impact it must have on their concentration levels, which we know will then impact on their future as well. You know, surely that's got to be an intervention, hasn't it? You know, addressing it with young people has got to be a huge need at the moment.
Well, you're setting up to fail, aren't you? You know, and I remember speaking to a Tory about a right to food and universal free school meals, and he'd gone to a private school, public school, and I said, you know, I bet you never had an issue around being fed in school, and you never had, you would have been able to reach your full potential because food wouldn't be an issue. You'd have been well fed, well watered, and ready for lessons. And he said, no, I agree. And you know how he said how they went through the day was remarkable. And obviously working with lots of schools within my constituency, and blessed to have Knowsley within my constituency now. I've a couple of boards in Knowsley and doing some great work, unbelievable work in some of them schools. But you see the levels of what they've got to do, the teachers, to get the kids ready for school. You know, so working class kids have so many barriers put before them to achieve anything. So, you know, you're not going to maximise your ability if you're going to school and you can't concentrate, you're hungry. And it's just a staple thing. And Shami Chakrabarti said to me, and it resonates so much, you go to school, and obviously being old school, you know, you get your pens, you get your paper, now it's computers. There's heat and there's light, that's accepted. Well, why isn't food accepted completely as that? Universal free school meals and breakfast should be a key part of your school day, and then at least you've got the chance, haven't you, you know, to go into school and try and achieve potential without your belly rumbling. And some of the stories, I'm sure you've seen them on the ground, you know, kids taking school whatever food you've got home with them to feed the family. You know, it's, you know, I keep going back, 6th richest country in the world. You know, this should not be happening. No, you know,
it's all right. I think that's what young Finn was saying, wasn't he? You know, he said, have you ever tried to concentrate when you're hungry, and the impact this has on your education? And you know, food insecurity is also linked to high rates of self-harm, anxiety, suicidal thoughts among young people. You know, it's shocking, isn't it? And this is a basic need, isn't it? You know, you mentioned a few times as well about Fans Supporting Foodbanks, another amazing initiative. Just tell us all about that.
Yeah, that started in 2015 with myself, Dave Kelly and Robbie Daniels, and that come about from a trip when I was a trade union organiser to a local community centre, and me and Dave were meeting the lead worker within that centre. She was fantastic, a woman called Ruth, and there was a big queue outside, and it was like 10 minutes from our house walk, because I live in Anfield, and there was people within the queue who were new, and I thought they were queuing up for the bingo, and they weren't. They were queuing up for the food bank. And I said to Ruth, I said, it's busy today, isn't it? You know, what have you got on? And she went, that's the food bank, Ian. It's like a dagger to my heart. And then she took me into the back room. And we never forget it, David. So you had a big bag of pasta, putting it into people of our age, 10-pence sweet bags. And that was a food bank that was run with donations from the people who were suffering. So, you know, that's all they had. So I went home that night, and I just couldn't get the image out of my head. I just could not get the image out of my head. And me and Dave and Liverpool and Everton had worked collectively fan groups on cheaper ticket prices, and so we'd had that. You know, Liverpool's got that sort of like collective, and we work together. So I said to him, I said, you know, we got Anfield there, you know, 60,000 people. So I thought, well, why can't we just ask them for a donation of supporters? And then he said, well, we've got Everton across the road as well. Why don't we do it every week? So that's where Fans Supporting Foodbanks come from, really. And it was a simple idea, which is probably the best. It was just asking supporters to donate. But running parallel to that was also to educate, because I was ashamed of myself that within my community in 2015, after 5 years of austerity, we knew things were tough. I didn't understand in my little work bubble and your little bubble that you're in. I didn't understand what was actually happening, and that brought it home to us. So, really humble beginnings. As I said, first game was United at Goodison. We asked the council for some wheelie bins. They give us a couple of wheelie bins. We got more chip papers than tins, but there was tins, and there was a gem of an idea there, and we thought, right, and we just absolutely embraced it and partnered with North Liverpool Foodbanks, and it grew and grew and grew. And just before COVID, I think there was over 35% of all donations coming into the food banks pantries in the city were coming from football supporters. What we then done was create a national network, because obviously people can see what you're doing, and good people from other communities and other football clubs thought, we can do that. And we encouraged them. So City, United, Newcastle, West Ham, and then suddenly all the sectarian divides are getting broken down. And a couple of things stand out with that. The first donation to Liverpool, to Manchester United Fans Supporting Foodbanks come from Liverpool fans, British Shankly. You know, breaking down sectarian differences, making the working class never more important now, understand, you know, what unites us, you know, is far greater than what divides us, and know who your real enemy is. So again, it was political education, as well as doing something on the ground, making sure that people understood, you know, working class communities are under attack here from political choices, and know who your real enemy is. And it's grew, and it's grew, and it continues to thrive. And then obviously we looked at what was happening with food banks. We didn't like the food bank model, loved the people who work in them, but I just thought it was we thought it was stigmatising. So we created mobile food pantries across the city, which are basically like farmers markets. And they've gone from strength to strength, unfortunately, because there's a need there. But we had a report done from Liverpool John Moore's, and basically a lot of people were utilising it as well for friendship, because it is a market, and you go and, you know, so that was interesting for us, that we created something to obviously try and alleviate food poverty, but there were so many other issues, you know, within, you know,
it goes back to that
isolation.
community and dignity again, doesn't it? Because
Again,
I went to the one in Everton, and say, you wouldn't know that it was a food pantry or anything. You just think it's a community event. People are there just having a cup of tea and having a natter, and it's a social thing as well, isn't it? You know, it's done with a way that's not stigmatising. You know, it's just the perfect model, isn't it? How nice is that then, just to see, you know, it started at Liverpool Everton, and now most football clubs are doing this as well. You know, obviously you don't want it there in the first place, but to see that the people have come together.
I think it's great that network's come forward, and it's been invaluable, you know, and obviously for the Right to Food campaign, and you know, it's something we're extremely proud of. We made great friendships. It's spread to Scotland, Fans Supporting Foodbanks Scotland, running the Rate of Knots, Rangers and Celtic collecting together. Who'd have thought? Sectarian divides, you know, Dundee United, breaking down barriers constantly, and that was always a key aim. As I said, that political education element of it, but also what it's done for us as well. So we talk about the right to food. So what the next step of a right to food? I touched on it before, but what we've launched 2 weeks ago at the University of Westminster at the Right to Food Congress was a commission. So the idea will be a commission now, going into communities across the UK. We'll be having select committee style panels, but also citizens' assemblies. And we're going to create a document over the next 9 months, which will be a substantial piece of work. and that will be a roadmap from a legislation point of view, why we need a right to food and what it could look like. The Fans Supporting Foodbank networks will be invaluable because we could be going to Newcastle, working with them to create the citizens' assemblies. We were with lads from Ipswich, two fantastic young lads from Ipswich who were massively involved in Ipswich Fans Supporting Foodbanks. They want to help us and assist with the citizens' assemblies there. So what we've done is created a network of good people.
Yeah.
And now it feeds into different areas of what you do moving forward. So it's something we're proud of, yeah.
Amazing. I think what for us, you know, it's amazing that we have an MP who gets their hands dirty and does all of the community-based work and actually is, you know, proud of the work they do in their own area. How important is that, do you think? You know, should all MPs be involved in sort of like community-based so they have a realisation of what's happening?
Oh yeah, I think it can't do anything but good, can it? To make you understand that, you know, and you know, it took me a bit to understand, obviously, the power that you've got up there, and the ability, once you're in government, you've got the levers of power. You can do what you want. You know, it depends on how ambitious you are and what your vision is. But, you know, I'll never forget for me, what stark contrast was, I'd gone in to see Environmental Food and Rural Affairs about universal free school meals, the Secretary of State, and she's a lovely woman, but no idea, you know, born in Oxfordshire, dad was a vicar, millionaire solicitor, and I'm trying to tell them what's happening on the ground. Oh Ian, you know, I can understand, see your passion, you know, I know it's terrible, people, kids are going hungry, but, you know, the Chancellor, it just won't get past the Chancellor, it's just not on our top of our agenda. So I'm struggling to think, well, why isn't it on top of your agenda? However, a week later, I'm sitting in the chamber and the then Chancellor Sunak, who then become Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, he stands up and he goes, right, COVID loans, we're just writing off, I think, £6 billion. And he wasn't a mayor. And I thought, my God, my head nearly fell off the back of the chamber thinking, that's 3 times what I've just asked you for universal free school meals. It was like the worst thing you could do to some MPs, asking for universal free school meals, but you've just wrote off £6 billion like that. And we know all the COVID contracts, and we know all that that's played out. So that's why, you know, the Labour Party have just got such a wonderful opportunity with such a massive mandate to do these things. And that's obviously why, you know, I keep pushing, because if they don't, well then people won't see a substantial change in their lives, and then they'll look elsewhere, and that is a crime in my opinion. Yeah.
Before I sort of digress with a couple of other questions, just wonder if Colin, if Dan, I've got any while we're still on the food topic.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Well, yeah. I have. I don't know, you got down, whatever. It's not really questions, but it's just a mate of mine, Chris, like he said about the food pantries, he's been linked in with his work is with a company shop, like, you know, I've got places in Everton over in the world as well. But, you know, the areas that I've worked in, with my job being in the community, I always remember saying to my friends over in Ireland, like, you know, you don't realise what poverty is. You know, I never knew what poverty was till I moved to Liverpool and worked in areas also like, you know, the North End, the Fort Estate, and places like that as well. And I actually really had an eye opener to it. And my mate says, oh, well, we had it hard growing up. And I go, well, yeah, we did, but you do not realise. And what, like, you know, thinking, I know, you know, some people will, your opinions on, but, you know, what Frank Field did whenever he actually did that speech, like, you know, in Parliament, like, you know, the lass who then moved, whatever, she was crying her eyes out with it. But that was a norm. Things like that actually happened where basically, you know, kids were crying because of hunger. So what I'm trying to say is that those people in power, not just talking about the people in government and things like that, those people in who may be university lecturers or, you know, doctors, nurses, or, you know, anything like that, architects, whatever, they don't realise this is the reality. And so maybe, this sounds a terrible question, do we need more of this poverty pornography to actually, because there was that benefit street that they put on, people don't live like that, but people do live like this, and people don't understand it, people don't see it. And I'm just thinking, do we need to do more of this out there? I haven't got a clue, but it's just...
It's a good... We don't need poverty pornography.
Yeah, I know,
no, you're right, what you're saying.
Engrossed with it, like, you know.
Yeah, and also it's used as a political bat then, isn't it? You know, to batter the working classes, feckless, and that runs right through it. I've sat in a, Westminster Law debate with Lee Anderson, and Anderson's used all them lines from that. a good example of that was, so we got the Ep032 committee to come down to Liverpool to look at what we were doing with the pantries, as different models of tackling poverty. And they did, and the chair is a sir, and he had opinions which were anchored in the Victorian ages around poverty, and he came to Liverpool and it made a massive impact on him. Right. Because he come to the Everton pantry and he seen all the wraparound care that was happening. But he spoke to people about why they were in them positions. Yeah. You know, and I think he spoke to a couple of people who had 2 jobs, 0-hour contracts. Yeah. You know, who were living really insecure lives. Wanted more, wanted to work. So I think when he come up here, he got a real understanding of, you know, that narrative, George Osborne's, you know, which still pervades even after COVID. You would have thought people would have a bit of an epiphany on that, but knowing that you could only be a month's wages from, you know, catastrophe. He had an eye opener. So you're right. I think it does politicians the world of good to actually go on to, you know, the Ford estate, you know, and see that, you know, circumstances can dictate, you know, that people are in this opportunity and they haven't got the opportunity to lift themselves out. So I think it's good to shine a light on it. It's how it's done.
Because one thing in particular I do with the students who use it as an education tool, we've got the library facilities we actually have here. There's this called Bob, where you can actually look at TV in the past and things, guess whatever, but one film that's actually on it is I, Daniel Blake. So I show the students how to do it and go, this is how you do it, and they watch it. And I go, this is your homework. This is what you got to do. You know, be saying, watch TV for your homework, and just never heard of it. Yeah, and things like that. And I don't want to give spoilers, but the food bank scene still gets me. Yeah, that bit or whatever. It's just,
you know, and I think, you know, Boys from the Black stuff's come back out now. You know, I took my lads, I took my 2 sons to see that. You know, and you know, we're living in parallel times really, but. You know, that's a political education in itself. You know, I'm told them to watch the series. You know, watch that series. But I, Daniel Blake's one of the most incredible pieces of filmography. Loach, isn't it? Amazing. Ken Loach, just magnificent, isn't he? He's magnificent. But again, that's an education. You know, you watch that. That's exactly what people are living through.
It's a true portrayal, isn't it? You know?
But just one other thing. Sorry, it's not really a question, but it's just like, you know, obviously it's the man hug. Like, you know, it's not always focused on men, but you know, these are the things. But it's also that pressure on men not being able to provide for their families and things like that. And we need to think that bit as well. You know, well, parents not being able to provide for their kids and things like that. So, you know, there's uniform policy. Go on, Dan. Sorry.
Obviously, the main focus is about feeding children, and that's obviously extremely important, isn't it? And the free school meals should be a given, has been put perfectly when we spoke to him. But all too often, parents will be prioritising feeding their children, and they may be working, like you say, 2 jobs on 0-hour contracts, and not eating themselves. And that's going to impact, you know, on the physical health, but it's also going to massively impact on the mental health. And that sort of that feeling of you know, uselessness that, you know, I can't even work 2 jobs and feed myself, you know, and that's going to then lead down that road of you need to access mental health support, access sort of, you know, your GPs and whatnot. And let's say it's just, how did we get here is what I was talking to Conliffe before.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And we said about the 80s, you know, Boys from the Black stuff and all these programs that used to be on about, you know, and you know, Auf Wiedersehen Pet and you know, working class programs and stuff that we used to watch when we were kids. But I grew up in the 80s and I don't remember food banks. I don't remember, you know, people needing to you know, fear that stigma of not being able to feed themselves. We're all nurses. And one of the saddest things, and I don't work at LJME anymore, I worked here for 4.5 years, one of the saddest things I heard when I worked here was that student nurses were having to access food banks. Oh, yeah. Now, when I trained, I was very lucky because we were given a bursary, which gave us a little bit of, you know, an nest egg to help us. You'd still perhaps need to do bank work and stuff like that, but these people are offering their lives to a profession which is investing in people and helping people and making people's lives better in a magnitude of ways, and we can't even give them a little bit of a leg up to help them feed themselves. They've got to resort to food banks. That was the saddest thing that I heard in the entire time I worked here, is that our students are having to access food banks. There's something seriously wrong with society when, you know.
Well, that's a political decision.
Yeah.
You know, where exactly, I work.
Yeah.
And I say this when I go into see students and they go about politics. I say decisions are made in that place which affect your lives forever. you know, and that was a political decision. It was a disastrous political decision.
Yeah.
Horrendous, you know, and, you know, the people, if Pete Osborne is always this genius, he should be in jail. I've said that publicly. He should be in Nick. Yeah. You know, he should be doing time for what he's done to this country, what he's done to the fabric. But, you know, you touched on the mental health element. You know, the other week we had a dad gone in touch with me, and private landlord puts his rent up by 450 quid a month. He's 2-0, him and his missus were both working, bit of insecure work, but, you know, they couldn't afford it. So now he's had to split his 4 kids up, put them in different family homes. He's sofa surfing, she's sofa surfing. The family's completely and utterly blitzed. So imagine the mental health aspect on him, his wife, his kids. All the family, they've got to take, you know, so it's a huge pressure cooker on all, isn't it? And we go back to the 80s. I'm glad you made that point, because I was going to make exactly the same point. You know, my fella was in and out of work. He worked in standards. We was brought up in council farm and a council house. But we always had a meal on the table. And, you know, you might have been, you know, like everyone else was, scruffy. You didn't have all the thing, but you were happy, and you had the council house roof over your head, and you had a meal on the table. That's been absolutely decimated. So, you know, private landlords now hold, you know, lots of people lives in the palms of the hand. There's not enough social lives, and you know, if we don't solve that, well, then you won't solve the mental health crisis within the country, because that's a huge driver, what you've just outlined there.
Amazing points again, yeah. One thing I just really wanted to mention as well, Ian, and it's probably reiterated it more the way that we've been speaking about these, you know, your passion always comes across. But one thing I've noticed over the however many years, MPs come in for some vile comments on the likes of social media. But one thing as well, which has made me think today, is when you're passionate about an area like this and you take it to Parliament and it either gets rejected or battered back, that must have a great implication on your own mental health as well, you know. Putting all this hard work in, and you obviously must get angry about it, because I know I'm angry just listening to it, you know. So what do you do for your own mental health? Because being an MP is not an easy job.
No, it's a privilege, it's a vocation. Yeah. You know, it's something I'm extremely privileged to do, and I say this, you know, all the time. It really is, you know, the jobs that I've done in my life, taxi driver and worked in factories, printing, and, you know, to have the opportunity to go and actually do something which you feel as though has benefited the community is a real privilege. But yeah, you know, at the moment, you know, it can be difficult, you know, where we are politically. The world at the moment's not a good place, and certainly my politics put me in opposition with others. But I think having, you know, lived experiences, so the Hillsborough Law example, you know that was pressure, you know, because obviously, you know, I'd been there, you know, it's been just hardwired into my life. You know, so then for Andy Burnham and Stevie Rotherham to go, yeah, you know, we want you to take this on as parliamentary lead, you know, that was just, I just felt so much pressure. Also, privilege and honour, and working with the families and survivors and all the other groups to do that, but also, you know, such an obligation, really, that, you know, I was in this position. You know, I'd sit in my cab and scream at the radio when I was driving, or going, you know, you're not doing enough. So when you're in that position, you're thinking, friggin' hell, you know, you're in this position now. So obviously 6 months ago, when the government tried to renege on what deals were law and tried to pass something which was completely insubstantial, you know, that knocked me, you know what I mean? And then you had to get, well, right, we're not accepting this, you know, just not accepting it, you know, we're not getting done over again. So part of that lived experience also gives you the fuel in your tank, and the determination not to let them do it again. And I think collectively with everybody else connected to the campaign, we made sure that we've got something now moving forward. So, but I must admit, you know, on Tuesday after that, I was goosed. I was absolutely done in for 3 days, you know, and you don't normally get like that, but I think because you're so invested in something, you know yourselves, you forget about yourself, don't you? And it's just about getting over that, getting it. And once you get it, you know, you're just like, so yeah, and obviously playing Everton on Saturday helped, because then obviously I'm winning as well. That's also like, and then seeing your mates and having a pint and, you know, having just getting out of that environment. But yeah, look, that's the job. And I firmly believe that if you're lucky enough to be in this job, you've got an opportunity. You've got an opportunity. It's probably like your vocation. No, if you're going to go in it half-assed, but you're not going to be any good at it. You know, you've got to have a passion for what you do, and you've got to believe that you can make people's lives better. And politics can, but it can make people's lives worse as well. And I think you've got to fight them forces.
Is there support within, you know, within sort of like parliaments? You know, is there sort of like a, you know, any sort of like psychological support?
Yeah, you've got like you'd have got like a network that you can phone if you feel as though you need that, and yes, well, there is them sorts of avenues. So to be fair, you know, Parliament's offered that. I've never used it, but you know, it's, I think also from a political point of view as well, it's also your family as well. It's everything, you know what I mean? And you know, if you say something which people in the street don't believe in, when your kids get it then in the neck, you know what I mean? What you're feeling on about? You know, why has he done this? So you know, it's part of the it's part of the cost at the moment. And obviously social media, you know, it can be a great tool, but it can also be ruthless as well. And to be fair, I put something out and you might have 800 comments, you just don't need them. You just don't. It's pointless. You know, even if you get ones that think you're great, ones that think you're absolutely garbage and you're talking to your backside, and then some are really vicious. So yeah, it comes with the territory, but there's always a worry that people are taking too far. And 2 weeks ago we seen an MP in the northeast, their office get burnt out.
Of course,
you know, we've had a fella stand outside my office with a knife and say, you know, David Amos won't be the last, a far-right extremist. So unfortunately, I think where we are now with the toxicity with Trump, what Trump's brought into the discourse, and then obviously what we're seeing with Farage and Robinson, you know, all this, we're seeing the country sort of like shift, and not for the better.
No. Wow, okay. What one sort of like, you touched on the Hillsborough Law there as well, so I don't want to sort of like go too deep into it, but just a little bit of a, you know, if you could give us a sense of what it is and where it's up to for people.
So basically it's a piece of legislation which has got two key tenets, and duty of candour with criminal sanctions basically means, if we look at Hillsborough, used as an example, when we have police officers lie with impunity and inquests and inquiries, because there was nothing for them to be scared of. Well, that had to end, you know, when we had to make sure that, you know, that evasion of accountability and truth and justice from the state, you know, was something that, you know, obviously we were passionate about. Andy brought the 2017 legislation through. He then leaves Parliament, and obviously he handed it to me to try and push through. And the second element is parity of arms. So, you know, from a Hillsborough perspective again, you know, you speak to the families, they had to crowdfund a single solicitor who was a young junior, because that's all you could afford. Well, you're taking on the forces of the state with unlimited funds, with the finest KCs in the land, you know. And I used it last week, you know, it's like going into a boxing ring with Tyson Fury, blindfolded, with your arms down behind your back, and that was the justice system. Now, how's that right? So when you've got people, you talk about mental health, you know, all that fight, that took so much out of people, hasn't it? And it was unnecessary. You know, Duckenfield could have stood up in the first inquiry and said, yeah, I made a catastrophic error, and it was on me. You know, and then the truth and the accountability, you could have grieved. You speak to some of the families, they haven't really grieved, because they haven't had time to breathe, because they're fighting for justice. So the Hillsborough Law will transform this country. If what comes out at the end of it, we've started the process, we'll start the process with the first reading. That's got to go through Parliament, it's got to go to the Lords. There'll be forces who want to take that down, who want to defang that, who want to keep the lack of accountability and the ability to cover up by the state. We've got to fight back against them. And we've got to make sure that when it comes out at the end, it's a legacy for the 97, but also for the many other people wronged at the hands of the state in this country. And, you know, the list's endless, isn't it? It's going to be incessant from the NHS perspective as well.
I've heard you speak, you know, because it's titled Hillsborough Law, but you've spoken with like Grenfell victims and obviously postmasters and the bloodborne fires,
contaminated blood.
Yeah, all of these sort of things as well. So it's amazing that it's going to be such a collective piece of work, isn't it? Ian, we can't thank you enough. Honestly, it's amazing to have you, and you know, it's great to have someone so passionate, especially around the right to food and the work you've always done with Fans Supporting Foodbanks. You know, it's so inspiring. If anyone is listening, they want to get involved, is there any way that they can with Right to Food campaign? For
yes. So you go on my website, and I hate saying this, but if like you're plugging yourself, but you know, www.ianbyrne.org, and there's a piece on the Right to Food. And also, it's just put a page on about the commission and how that's going to develop. So potentially, you know, we want people to get involved in certain areas, send in their evidence, and we want to make sure that it's a collective voice from the people to the powers that be, that this is why we need a right to food. And again, I'd say to people who, like you touched on with the lad from St Helens before, who I'd like to have a chat with as well. You know, do something in the community. There's loads of opportunities, get involved. And I always say that if you want to get into politics, well, get into the community first, do good things, and then hopefully you can go into that. You can go into politics then with the mindset where you want to actually utilise the levers of power for good. I think that's a great grounding.
That's brilliant advice. We touch on it all of the time on the Man Hug about the power of doing something in your community for your own mental health as well. Yeah, you know, it's such an amazing thing to do, isn't it? And it's great for yourself, but especially in recent weeks, you know, with this Unite the Nation or whatever they want to call it as well. Start on your own door. You know, go and help with your litter picking groups of a weekend. Go and help with your food banks, whatever it is. Start local, isn't it?
Alan Gibbons, like, you know, doing all the stuff he's doing, just local communities, just as you said, strimming. Yeah. You just, you know, the council areas and things like that, and just going moving on from there. Yeah. It's class.
Yeah, definitely. But Ian, once again, honestly, thanks so much for being an amazing guest. But we really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks very much.
Oh, thanks.
You're listening to the Men's Mental Health Podcast, The Man Hug.
Okay, it's just part of the podcast where us, the hosts, we discuss the theme. And obviously, the theme being food today, we thought we'd have a little look at the impact of food on brain health. So food inequality in the UK is closely linked to poor mental health. It creates a cycle of hardship that affects adults and children alike. And addressing food insecurity is not just about nutrition, it's also a crucial step in improving the nation's mental health and breaking the cycle of poverty and psychological distress. It's described as food insecurity and poor mental health being a vicious cycle. They reinforce each other. So mental health problems can make it harder to work or manage finances, increasing the risk of food insecurity. And in turn, food insecurity worsens mental health. It creates a cycle that is difficult to break. So the brain in health part, well, food poverty and insecurity have significant impacts on our neurotransmitter systems in the brain, which in turn affect our mood, our thought process, and our overall mental health. Now, we've spoke about serotonin quite a lot, and we did say that around about 90-95% of all serotonin is produced in the gut. So it helps regulate our mood, it helps regulate our sleep and our appetite. So if you take that into consideration, we need the right fuel in our system to have a healthy mind as well. I say about 95% serotonin is produced in the gut, and poor nutrition or food insecurity can reduce its production. So it leads to low mood, irritability and anxiety. Dopamine, again, we've spoke about this in the past around it being kind of our reward neurotransmitter, but food insecurity, especially in childhood, can affect dopamine pathways which are involved in motivation, reward and learning. It can result in long-term changes in cognitive flexibility and even our decision making, as well as increased vulnerability to mental health problems. Norepinephrine as well, again, it's one that is often related to stress, and chronic stress from not knowing when or what you'll eat next increases our levels of stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, which can further disrupt neurotransmitter balance and our emotional regulation. So when neurotransmitters balance is disrupted by hunger or poor nutrition, people experience difficulties with memory, concentration and emotional regulation, and it can manifest as irritability, low mood, anxiety and even long-term cognitive deficits if food insecurity is prolonged. And for me, the most important advice I've given as a mental health practitioner, along with getting your 8 hours of sleep each night, is if you eat crap, you will feel like crap. So if you are struggling with low mood and anxiety, please always just have a look at what you're consuming and see what changes you can make if possible. We know that sugary foods and drinks, highly processed foods, fried food, alcohol, caffeinated drinks like energy drinks, artificial sweeteners, processed meats and junk food will all have a negative effect on our brain. Remember, what's good for the heart is also good for the head. Boys.
Yeah, do you want to go, Dan?
Yeah, I'm just making some notes off Dean's wise words there. So food insecurity is one thing. I think we've talked a lot about, obviously, the need for food banks, food pantries with Ian, but also poor food choices. So, you just mentioned then about we are what we eat at the end of the day, I suppose, aren't we? And from practice, one of the key things I find that I'm doing, and it seems, in a lot of ways, it seems obvious to me what we should eat, and if we don't eat healthily, then expect to feel like crap. But I think there needs to be a lot more education out there. For 20 odd years now, we've had the things such as the 5 a day campaigns, which I thought was a brilliant idea, but it's kind of it's almost become a bit of a forgotten thing now. And we know people still aren't regularly eating 5 fruit and veg a day. That's a minimum 5 fruit and veg a day, by the way. Not it's not like can tick them off, and eating an appropriate portion size as well. So in practice, now I regularly see people present with being tired all the time, and so we do a set of bloods on these patients to try and investigate a little bit as to why they may be feeling like this, and a lot of the time when we take a history from these patients, they say that their sleep's also disturbed as well, which again can be caused by a magnitude of things. But one thing that I find interesting is the majority of people that I do blood tests on come back with raised or deranged lipids or cholesterol issues, and all the rest of the bloods will come back absolutely fine. But invariably, the amount of patients, it's a massive percentage of the patients that I do these tired all the time bloods on come back with raised lipids or deranged cholesterol bloods. And in the area that I live in, it makes complete sense because we're it's a relatively mid-sized town. We've got 3 McDonald's, we've got 2 KFCs, we've got a Burger King, we've got what seems like about 3,000 blinking kebab houses, and it's like this food is readily available, relatively cheap, and given the socioeconomic, the demographic within the area that I work, you can see why people are probably going to these places before going to the supermarket to buy the healthy ingredients to make themselves a meal, which would be better for their sort of their gut health. And you're saying about the healthy gut can lead to more appropriate levels of serotonin, etc. From a chemical perspective, a neurotransmitter perspective. But yeah, you can see how these people are then perhaps having tummy upsets at night. It's waking them up, or there's lots of other symptoms that are coming from the fact that they've got a poor diet and they're not eating
I think just touching on that with what Ian was saying as well, it's okay preaching that we have our 5 fruit and veg a day, isn't it? But if you can't afford it, because they're expensive at the end of the day, what do we do for that? Because you just you're causing another problem which is going to impact on physical health, and your physical health is going to impact on your mental health.
I think a lot of times access to it as well. So I know when I worked at the local hospital, what they'd do once a week would be have like a greengrocers, and they'd bring all the fruit and veg would be there. It would be at a reasonable price, and visitors would be able to purchase, healthy, obviously fruit for their relatives as they were visiting. But on the way out, they might take something home with them. I thought that was quite an interesting and good initiative, and also helping out, the local greengrocers and stuff as well. So from a practice point of view, I do see it a lot that poor diet can lead to other symptoms with regards to people being tired all the time, and affecting the making them feel lethargic all the time, impacts on low mood, feeling tired all the time. And
how many patients do you have down who've got a physical health condition brought on by lifestyle and diet that then makes them feel really bad, and impacts on their mental health?
Well, masses, yeah. So you could almost argue that every patient that comes in, has got some level of need for a healthier healthier living, whether that be a large amount or a small amount. And as we're trained as nurses, a big part of our job is health promotion. So, I do feel sometimes that you'd think you'd almost think it's like teaching granny to suck eggs, but it's not. These people really have no idea a lot of the time what they're doing to themselves by regularly. I had a lovely patient a few months ago, and we were talking about her cholesterol, which was sky high, and she's on all manner of medications for her cholesterol, for her heart, etc. And she was so cute, and she said, I really need to stop eating the KFC. I said, well, what do you have when you go to KFC? She said, I have a bucket. I said, what to yourself? And she went, yes, I'm very naughty, aren't I? Which I said, well, really speaking, you shouldn't be eating all that fried chicken to yourself, should you? And she's such a lovely lady, but it struck home that we expect people to have a level of understanding as to what's not good for them, but sometimes they might not to, or sometimes you just feel, well, it's the one thing that makes me happy in life, having that KFC bucket once a week, and I really enjoy it. And it's like we've said before about smoking and drinking and gambling and all these things that we do that we know are not good for our health. We do because it kind of it makes us feel better about ourselves, or gives us something to look forward to. And sometimes invariably those things that we yearn for and crave are the very things that are making our physical and mental health very unhealthy. So, but yeah. Anyway, I'll shut up now.
No, that's really interesting, and it's great because you're in practice in a place where physical health is the main issue, isn't it? But you're seeing it, and you're living and breathing how the impact of poor diet has these implications on our overall health, really. So yeah, it's fascinating. Conor.
Dean, Dan, just to reiterate just about the food banks in particular, what you were saying and what Ian was also saying is, sadly, that ousted MP, was it Meg the Mog, who said, isn't it great we've got food banks and things like this, whatever, isn't it exceptional, whatever, and just thinking, obviously not living in the real world, but what kind of foods do they actually keep in food banks? It's stuff that has a long shelf life, carbs, so the fresh fruit and things like that people really need aren't actually there. But just to go back again, whenever, it's like speaking with kids and grandkids, I love it whenever they actually say, I'm starving. I'm going, no, you're not starving, you're hungry. Children in Gaza, they're starving. And it does actually create these things as well, because I'm going to approach this maybe from a social public health side. There's that issue of what is malnutrition, and of course straight away we think of the malnourished per child and things like or whatever. But as we know, obesity is a form of malnourishment. Yeah, you can actually have children, older people who are actually well overweight, but they are malnourished because they haven't got the right vitamins, minerals and things like that actually in their body. And it's basically because of the kind of, carbs fill a hole. And that's it, we've all done it before. We've just come home absolutely, really hungry, things like this. 2 slices of bread with a bit of butter on it, just shove it into our mouths, and it does work. But it's around these things about, as you said, it's that what is available to you, what you can actually do. I remember one time, and quite rightly so, it was an MP actually was kicking off because look at this, I cooked this meal, very healthy meal for all my family, and it worked out about, I don't know, £1.50 per portion. But it's not the fact of actually how much it costs, it's actually having the ability to cook it, the gas to cook it, all these kind of things, looking at the poor people, reading an article today in The Guardian, where people are in hotels. I know it's a very contentious issue, refugees in hotels. Yes, there is food available for them. What kind of food is it? Chicken nuggets, chips. And all the asylum seekers were getting ill. So they've actually illegally, some of them actually maybe start cooking in their own rooms and things like this, where we're cooking good food. And they're doing it on the toilet floor, on a hot plate and things like this, wherever this is, this is the desperation of people whenever it actually comes to these things. Cost of food, as we know, it is going up, things like this, whatever. But as I said, it's about that ability to cook, that knowledge to cook. Where do people learn? Fortunately for my kids is the fact that, here you go, cook, you got to do these things. And they can actually do it. And it's passing that knowledge on, taking that time to do these things. So having those lessons, like, you know, I don't know, I've never did home economics or anything like that. I don't know what kind of things you learn with regards to that. But is it making cakes or whatever? Or is it making healthy food? I don't know. But I did what I learned from my mum. And basically then eventually my mum and dad had to go to work. So whenever they came home, the tea was on the table and was cooked by myself. And that was a lot of people do it. It was simple food, don't get me wrong, like, you know, but it's this ability which we all, and we make it a joint thing as well, like, you know, looking at all these issues of food. But don't get me wrong, if I'm here by myself, I love cooking, I enjoy cooking. Dan is coming to stay, man. He's having a sleepover at mine on Thursday. You know, we're top and tailing in the bed. Like, you know, I've got the webcam ready. But but already I'm thinking, I know what to cook and things like this, whatever, because I do these kind of things. I'm weird that way where I do think ahead. But if I'm by myself, what do? I just have a sandwich. I can't be bothered and things like that. And I do understand it, like, you know. So it's having those things as well in particular. But just on a lighter note, is around this education awareness, because we do think of class and what people can actually, what they're aware of and what they can actually get hold of and things like this, whatever. But a little example, on a lighter note, I was at my my niece's Holy Communion many moons ago. And I have to say where it was, particularly, like, it was in Leamington Spa. And the priest had all the kids up, like, you know, doing this. And the priest actually said, you know, go to the kids and talk about food, and goes, well, what's your favourite kind of food? And you go to kids, like, you know, what would kids say? Oh, chips, you know, maybe nuggets, I don't know, roast dinner, or maybe something like this. What did these children say? Couscous. Like, yeah. And I turn around to my dad and says, fucking Royal Leamington Spa. Yeah. Like, you know, couscous. But it says it. It just says, you know, it's nearly like this child was primed to say these things. But it's just around that knowledge as well. And also what we need to do as a public health side. I always say is that I may disagree with a little bit of the thing that Dan said, is that we all know how to lead a healthy lifestyle, but it's not the fact that we choose to, it's about can we? You know, those things as well. And it's that ability to do these things. So it is looking around those things. Like, I remember a patient of mine sometimes used to cook me beans and toast when being there. And whenever I was there, I saw him cooking the beans and toast one time. And what he did, he got a big lump of lard, put it in the frying pan, put the beans in and served on top of buttered toast. You know, it was gorgeous. So good. But I was just thinking, you know, Billy, you need to do it differently. Like, you know, so you do think around those things. But, you know, I'm a big foodie and I exercise just so I can eat the food that I like. So I'll just leave it at that.
One more point is from what you've just been saying is the time and energy. If
yeah,
you've been doing a
exactly.
shift,
Yeah,
you're working 48-hour weeks.
Yes,
to pay the rent.
Yeah,
the landlords just put it up by £400, like Ian was saying before. Then you get home, you're exhausted. Mm-hmm. So is it easy to pick up a pretty cheap Mackey's on the way home?
Yeah.
And scoff that because you know you're going to go bed in an hour.
Spot on.
6 the next morning, or get home, find all the ingredients,
yep.
prepare all the ingredients,
yep.
cook the meal, eat the meal. You know.
Yeah.
I think we've all worked with a nurse as well who's fueled their whole shift with biscuits and chocolate, you know.
Oh, yeah.
So sometimes we're not we're practicing what we preach
yeah.
about.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. And we go back to what young Vince Stokes said, you know, around education is so important for children and young people around healthy eating as well, because it's often we'll all have had patients who have you know, the basic social learning theory, isn't it? If you've got parents who can't cook and they just have microwave meals, you're just going to have microwave meals, and it's about breaking that cycle, isn't it? And that thing that starts in schools, it's such an important thing. And again, you know, listening to your story there, kind of about patients. I remember I had a patient who had schizophrenia, and I'd often go around to his house to see what he'd have for his meal, and every week he'd have 7 microwave meals for his whole week. He'd spend that £7 knowing that he's got a meal each night. And I remember sitting with him going, do you realise how much salt's in this? Do you realise how you know, it's probably not going to have a better effect on your medication and things like that. And he never knew any of this. And he was like, oh, right, well, what do I do? So often it's sitting with people and just doing a bit of education, isn't it, you know? But
you know, it's also it's not education, it's also industry's got a part of this to do as well. Like, you know, it's just like, you know, all of a sudden the government came in and actually says, okay, you need to reduce your sugars in your food, whatever. What do? Did it overnight. They could have done this donkeys ago. You know, things like this. So we do need to think around those things.
And I mentioned before about energy drinks. Anyone in education who is listening, please stop them with your young people. They are poison. The amount of call-outs I used to get to assess young people because they weren't sleeping and they were developing psychotic symptoms, and then you'd sit with them and, I'm drinking 6 cans of this every day to help me revise, and it is really dangerous stuff.
I've told you about the patient when I was working at the hospital, the patient who was just constantly tachycardic, and it's like weeks after surgery, and we couldn't let him go.
For those that don't know, tachycardic is?
High. His pulse was always high.
Yeah, okay.
And yeah, we were like, what's going on with this lad? And then one more, I just walked in, doing more, and I walked in and I could see him slurping. It's like probably 9 o'clock in the morning, slurping on a can of the energy monster stuff. And I said, how many of them do you have a day? Oh, about 8. That'll do it. Wow. So we said, right, don't stop drinking them altogether. Just wean yourself down over the next couple of days. It's crazy.
It's the thing, isn't it? Because like I remember I went to a school education session with Danny Sculthorpe, the rugby player, and he was saying that he was warning them exactly the same thing. He said, when you have coffee or tea, the warmness irritates your bladder and you wear out, so you don't get full effects of caffeine, whereas these cold ones, they sit in your system for hours and hours and hours. And if you're then topping it up with numerous types, the levels of caffeine are just off the scale. So the impact that's having on your nervous system, your sleep, your overall mental health is so significant. Yeah. So,
but Blue Smarties are okay.
Blue Smarties are okay. Yeah, Blue Ice Pops, no, they're not really. So heed that warning of energy drinks. Yeah, they're horrendous things. Great chat as usual, boys. So we're going to have a little bit of a break. And next up, we've got Chris Guy, who's going to join us. And he's the chairman of the Mersey Mind Project.
You're listening to the Men's Mental Health Podcast, The Man Hug.
Okay, it's this part of the Man Hug where we shine a spotlight on local charities, projects and initiatives. I just want to acknowledge that we did have Vince Stokes, who is a young Member of Parliament, in for this section because he set up the charity Feed the Need, and we did get some good recording video footage which we'll put out, but sadly the audio quality of the initial recording was not great, so we won't actually be able to use it. But if you follow us on Instagram, you can check out Vin's interview on there. There's lots of great video footage. So we've got Chris Guy, who has stepped in. He is the chairman of the Mersey Mind Project. So Chris, welcome to the Man Hug.
Thank you very much for inviting us. I've been looking forward to this for a couple of months. So thank you very much for the invite.
Oh, amazing. Thanks, Chris. So the Mersey Mind Project, just tell us all about it.
Yeah, of course, Can. So my name's Chris Guy and I'm the chairman of Mersey Mind Project. We're a men's mental health charity that formed in July 2025. So we're relatively new. We did have another charity before Mersey Mind Project where I was the chairman and we had a couple of trustees and we ran very similar sessions. So Mersey Mind Project, in essence, is a community-driven initiative committed to empowering throughout Merseyside men to take charge of their physical and mental well-being. So we, at the moment, because we're quite a new charity, we've only got a couple of therapies, that we like to call them. We've got the football therapy, so we call that the Mersey Football Therapy, which is every Monday and Thursday. So it's basically a nice kick around with the lads, nothing too serious. Everyone needs to go to work the day after. So there's no malice in it or anything like that. It is quite a chilled and nice game of football. So we do that up at Shaftesbury Youth Club, which is just behind Tranmere Rovers Stadium, and that's every Monday and Thursday. And then we are due to launch our new peer support group on a Tuesday. So we've actually teamed up with Magenta Living, who have supported us. Richard Whelan is one of the trustees at our charity and our secretary, and he's a building surveyor for Magenta. So we've managed to get a lovely one of their buildings we're able to use free of charge, and we're going to host our peer support sessions there. So if you think of like Andy's Man Club session, we do it a bit more informal, so we don't all sit around the table and discuss everyone's problems. we do it in a more informal setting where you can just talk to somebody who you're getting on with, or you can talk in front of the whole group. And it's been quite good. We've already had a match at Marine FC. We do like to play up at Marine FC to do charity football matches. So we have already done a friendly match between ourselves, and then we've also got a couple of games lined up, one on the 30th of December and one on the 10th of February next year. I think Marine FC is obviously, everyone saw the Tottenham Hotspur story where Marine got them in the FA Cup and all the through COVID as well. One of the main things that we've kind of had the mission to set up this charity is because many communities across Merseyside, particularly in the more deprived areas, face deep-rooted health and social inequalities. So men in Merseyside have a significantly lower life expectancy, up to 12 years less compared to those in wealthier communities. So mental health issues such as anxiety and depression are widespread, but the stigma continues to prevent many men from seeking help. I see myself as quite an open and honest person. I've been no good as a chairman of a men's mental health charity if I didn't tell my story. So I have had no issues in telling my mental health struggles to the full group. I've also done talks in schools as well. And it's been quite good to talk to businesses as well, especially in the construction sector. So I work in the construction sector, and mental health is a lot more common for men to have issues working in the construction issue. And yeah, so it's just been a really nice couple of months setting the charity up. We've already got over 60 members who will join the charity. We've got a waiting list for the football on a Monday, and then we've got some spaces on the Thursday. And we're looking forward to doing new initiatives such as a walk and talk every month, which we'll probably do from Liverpool. So we do want to reach out to the full community, but what we discussed in our AGM the other week is we want to get the best at what we're doing. We want to get the best at the football and the peer support, and then we will branch out to other initiatives. Some of the people, the success stories we've had already have been absolutely amazing, and it's remarkable from playing football, which is such a beautiful game. You've seen, obviously, anything bad that happens in football, as we've seen recently with Liverpool, everybody comes together, whether you're a red, a blue, Tranmere fan, everyone comes together as a community. So it's quite good that we've got a really nice WhatsApp group set up for the charity, where we've got a lot of banter and we've got a lot of people making friends with each other, and it's just absolutely beautiful to see.
Oh, that's amazing, Chris. And they say in such a short period of time to have such positive effects is just credit to yourselves. You know, it's amazing. We were focusing on food poverty for this podcast, and we've had MP Ian Byrne join us, and it was interesting to hear you say, you know, about inequalities within this area, and you guys are focusing on the physical health side of things. Again, it's really refreshing for us to hear as well. Yeah, amazing. So how can people get involved? Do they need to refer, or can they self-refer?
Yeah, so they can either refer through agencies, or they can self-refer themselves. So all they need to do is go to merseyMindProject.co.uk/sign-up. And then there's just a simple online form with basic details about your name, your age, what kind of therapy you want to get involved in. And then one of our trustees will get in contact within 48 hours, and you'll be able to be signed up to a session for the following week. And I think, again, with Ian Byrne, I've seen exactly what he's done as an MP, and it's brilliant to see all the initiatives that he's driving. And I think food is a massive, massive issue for men's mental health, and not just because of poverty, but people who can't eat healthy, who can't afford to eat healthy as well. Because, as we all know, it's so much cheaper to go to a takeaway and get something for your tea than it is to freshly make stuff from fresh ingredients. And I think we've got an initiative which we discussed in the AGM, which is almost like a boot camp therapy. So we're going to be teaming up with a local gym in Wallasey, who are going to provide a 6-week boot camp session, and we are looking for a food provider for that, so somebody who can make the food, like a food plan for the men, and we are going to put a couple of men through that process of the therapy and the food, just to give them, you know, ordinarily they might not be able to access healthy food made for them. So again, everybody works full-time. Most of the people work full-time in the group, some don't, but if you are working full-time, sometimes you do struggle with a family to get home and make your own tea. So it is very difficult. And the food side of it, you've obviously got the other end of the spectrum, which is people don't eat enough. People have got bulimia and eating disorders, which we have had attendees from the group join, and even doing the football and making friends, it's made them feel better and made them want to eat and improve their mental health.
Wow, amazing. Thanks, Chris.
Hi, Chris. It's Conleth here. Just to say, one thing, absolutely fantastic. I think it's fantastic what's actually happened. It's also quite sad for, you've actually just brand new set up and you're so successful already in such short space of time. So it just shows that the need is actually out there. But I just want to congratulate you, because it's like, for me to get to work in the morning, I run along the promenade on the Wirral, down, I do a long run, whatever. But even on the Wallasey Town Hall steps, you see groups of lads out there sometimes, all coordinated doing running and things, I guess, whatever. And sometimes stop and chat to them, and it's just so powerful to see these things actually happening, and overlooking Everton Stadium as well. So maybe that's a good thing for someone, not or whatever, a bit of the banter. But no, I just want to say well done. Seriously, Chris, respect.
No, I really appreciate that. I think the campaign is a direct response to the social and health disparities experienced by men in Merseyside, and more men are facing a higher burden of mental health challenges with obesity, chronic diseases, all of which are contributing towards a reduced quality of life and shorter life expectancy. And I think, as COVID-19 is always used in discussions, and I think in the aftermath of it, of the pandemic, mental health has worsened, with even more men suffering in silence. Mersey Mind Project is here to change that. By blending our physical activity, open conversations and community engagement, we aim to break the stigma and provide practical, inclusive support for long-term wellbeing. And that's been shown because we've actually been chosen by the Mayor of Wirral, Brian Kenny, to be one of the chosen charities this year, which is an absolute honour. Yeah. We've already had a couple of events, and we've got a lot of events, fundraising events coming up. And some of them are in Liverpool, some are on the Wirral. And it's just good to do different things and bring the community together. I mean, we had a Northern Soul night last month, which had over 120 people there, and that was like the older generation, the people in the 60s, 70s and 80s, and it's just bringing together the community just to shout about men's mental health. It is one of the things that is not often spoken about. Us men do struggle to speak up, and even by myself sharing my story, I want to inspire other people to share their stories as well, which has happened in the group. And I've been so proud of some of the men. And honestly, I moved from Wigan across to the Wirral back in 2020. Yeah. And I didn't have many friends. So there's been such a good thing to set up to make a lot of friends and connections. And a lot of businesses get involved and sponsor, football tournaments that we've got. They're doing a lot of stuff. And I just feel like Merseyside is kind of my second home. I do really love living here. Yeah. But you can see, the social disparities of what Merseyside is as well.
Amazing. One thing that we often find as well, Chris, I remember one of the first podcasts we did over 2 years ago. We had Liverpool Football Therapy on, Colin Dolan, and we know how amazing groups like this are. But for some people, it can seem like a million miles away. It can seem like it's really difficult just to leave the house, can't it? So if anyone is listening and they're thinking, this sounds amazing, I want to give it a try, what kind of advice would you give for them?
Yeah, so I think a lot of our users have kind of experienced that, not wanted to speak up or to go to a session because they're worried about what people are going to think about them, whether it's because of how they look or the weight or just generally they're anxious about meeting new people. I think one of the best things about our sessions is that everyone is so welcoming. Everyone's on first name basis, and all our trustees, we all have the same goal, and we've all been in mental health struggles. If you have a look at our website, you can see exactly each individual trustee, what their story is, what their background is. And I think everyone's so unique and diverse, and coming to our sessions is no judgment whatsoever. Even if you're rubbish at football like myself, I still give it an attempt, and that's what gets me out of bed, and that's what gets me out of an evening to play football, because I know that I'm improving my physical health, but also my mental health. But the first step is always the hardest, and I'd be open to having a conversation with anyone before they come to one of our sessions, just to discuss their unique situation, how we can help them. And again, if you just use a contact form on the website, you're more than welcome to come directly through to me, and I'll be able to speak to them and get them involved in it. And once they're in, they're in. I mean, we've had some people in the football therapy, especially one person who's lost over 7 stone from doing the football. And even one of the lads last year, when he came to the first session at the other charity, he was really nervous and anxious, and he wasn't going to come. And I was texting him a few times and just encouraging him to come. And then one week he came, and he's been every single week ever since.
Amazing.
And it is just that first step, what we usually need to take. And it is difficult. I do appreciate it. It's something new, but it's well worth it once you're in.
Oh, that's brilliant. So it's great that you do that process, of meeting with people and easing them in. That's fantastic. So I suppose the big question, with starting this year, what's your hopes for the future of the project?
Yeah, so like I've said before, we want to get the best at the football therapy, the peer support therapy. We do want to open up new initiatives such as the boot camp therapy, the walk and talks. We've also got cycling therapy planned for next spring. So that's going to be really good when the weather gets better again. We're going to have some nice, because we're quite blessed on the Wirral and Liverpool that we've got the Wirral where we've got all the promenade to use, and it's cycling can be difficult. So we're going to make it as easy as we can for anyone, accessible as well. We're going to be teaming up with a local charity called Hype, who provide bikes. We're going to hire bikes off them once a month to do some cycling therapy. And I think once we have got the football and the peer support at its best, we will be looking for more people to get involved. So whether that's going to be a trustee, volunteers, we do want to branch out and get bigger. But it's obviously we don't want to run before we can walk. We want to take it slow, which is as a new charity, funding is a massive issue. We've been very lucky that we've managed to get a Sport England grant last week for £14,000, which will basically pay for the football therapy until next August. But as a new charity, it's so difficult because everyone requires 12 months worth of accounts, which we've not got. So we are relying on donations, on small grants, and if any businesses want to get involved with this, we've got a really good social media following. We're going to be setting out in the Liverpool Echo very shortly just to kind of announce our launch of the peer support therapy, and we're going to try and get our name out there. And it's just amazing just to do it with friends. I think all the trustees, I've never known them up until a year and a half ago, but they're all my best friends now. And it's completely changed my life as well as others.
Oh, wow, that's amazing, Chris. So I suppose the important thing, how can people follow? You're on social medias and how people can get involved?
Yeah, so our Facebook page is called Mersey Mind Project. We've got an Instagram page as well. We have got the website, which has all the social links on as well. And we have got a WhatsApp group. So we have got like a public WhatsApp group where people can join, even if they just want to get involved with the talk and the chats before they commit to something. They're more than welcome to join the WhatsApp group and just get to know everybody before they do jump in. Because as you've just said, some people can't just automatically say, right, I'm going to the football on Monday and turn up, because it's not as simple as that. So there is kind of like a breaking in process that we do want to do and ease everyone in slowly.
Brilliant. Oh, well, that's great, Chris, and I think it sounds absolutely amazing, the project, and we wish you all the best for it. I think, just thinking ahead, your walk and talk group, invite us along one time. Yeah. I'm sure we'll come along and, interview a couple of your attendees, and we can put that out as a podcast as well.
That'll be brilliant. Are you Reds or Blues or neither?
Oh, well, very interesting. So I'm a big Red. Conliffe is a Leeds fan, a dirty Leeds fan. And the other two are Man United fans. So
you know what? That is diverse, isn't it? I think I'm a Wigan fan myself, so I can't really say too much.
Good.
But we have got a few Man United fans. Eddie's a Man United fan, one of our trustees.
Yeah, I don't think they like to admit it anymore, do they, Chris?
No, they don't. They're definitely not in the current times, no. But I think I've seen one of our friends over at Talk Hub in Warrington. They're going to be doing a walk from Bramlingbourne Dock to Goodison Park. I think that's happening in March next year. Yeah. So we're probably going to try and get involved with them and make it as big as possible. I think there is a massive market out there for mental health walk and talks, especially in Liverpool.
Yeah, definitely.
And even just with the mental health walk and talks, that can lead on to other things where somebody might have a conversation, they might join the football or come to the peer support session, and we're getting people out of the house and we're making them feel like they're part of the community, which is what we're all about. And I think the final thing, what I've kind of got in my head, I've not shared it with other trustees yet, but I do think there's a massive opportunity for a mental health day, like the Invisible Wind Factory or something like that, where we can have stalls of all different charities and organisations, CICs, to come down, talk about what they're doing, and just to bring everybody in the mental health community, which is everyone in the world, by the way, together. I think when people say mental health, you automatically think negative about it. Mental health is such a diverse element of the continent, where one is you're not feeling good at all and it can lead to suicide, to 5 where it's absolutely amazing. What we want to do is we want to stop the 2s and 3s from going down to the 1s. We want to get them back up to a 4 or a 5. We want to help them, and we can't claim to save lives, but we can stop it from happening. That's what we're kind of all about and our goals.
Amazing.
Nice one.
Well, thanks, Chris. I'm sure we'll keep in touch in the future, and we'll do everything that we can to continue to support and promote you. But we just want to say, it's really inspirational to hear how amazing the project's already, the work that you guys are doing.
I really appreciate it. And the Man Hug podcast, give yourselves a follow as well on Instagram and listen to the podcast. You've got the Buzzsprout account as well, so everyone can follow the Man Hug as well. They're absolutely amazing, and what they're doing is giving charities like ourselves the voice to speak up and tell everybody what we're doing. So thank you very much for that.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks so much, Chris.
Cheers. Take care of yourselves.
If you or anybody else you know is struggling with their mental health, visit hubofhope.co.uk or download the app today and find local and national mental health support.
So follow us on Instagram at the Man Hug Podcast.